The Stargate Network is the miracle upon which interstellar civilization is built. Through its interconnected web of wormholes, peoples and cultures who might not have mastered anything more complex than wind power might nevertheless traverse across thousands of worlds throughout many galaxies. Entire societies have developed around the Stargates, viewed just as often as the work of the divine, as they are as mere tools for interstellar travel. Every manner of opportunity and every manner of danger has stepped through a Stargate at one point or another across its history. But few have brought greater consequence than those robed in white, who set foot upon countless lands, bearing the words, "Hallowed are the Aurai." At their core, the Aurai were equal parts an offshoot of the bygone Alterran peoples, a religion based on their supposed divinity and the auspices of statehood such a relationship necessitated. These three pillars were foundational to their civilization, though it was purposely difficult to delineate where one ended and the others began. The melding of these concepts was critical to the sustainment of each. The Aurai themselves, from which the entire society took their name, began as the Alterans. This species is believed to be the first evolution of humanity, from which all others ultimately derived. Millions of years before human life was seeded throughout the Milky Way galaxy, a split occurred among the Alterans over the perceived conflict between faith and science. The increasingly religious-driven faction became known as the Aurai, and forced the expulsion of those opposed to them, who would later become known as the Ancients. Eventually, the Aurai, like the Ancients, learned the methods by which they could ascend, relinquishing their mortal bodies to exist as pure energy within a higher plane of existence. They saw their transformation as evidence of their own divinity, and as justification for their praise and worship. Among the next evolution of humans still on the material plane, they passed down their own religion, known as Origin. The Tenets of Origin were based on a mixture of truth, exaggerations, and outright lies. The Aurai were revered as the creators of all life, and that they alone could guide humanity down a path of enlightenment through which the secrets of the universe could be answered. Most crucially, however, the methods of ascension were described not as a natural process, but something that the Aurai alone could bestow. Origin flourished across the Aurai's home galaxy, aided immensely by the otherworldly powers the Aurai could manifest within their most devout followers. First among these were the Priors, a genetically evolved subspecies of humanity artificially created by the Aurai. They traveled the Stargate Network as emissaries of Origin, spreading the faith and combating rival religions. Priors were gifted many otherworldly abilities to aid in this, from the manipulation of the physical world to the resurrection of the recently deceased. Priors also carried with them a deadly virus, the seemingly miraculous cure for which was often used to convince hesitant worlds to fully embrace the tenets of Origin. Millions took up a belief in Origin until the faith had developed its own intricate practices, ceremonies, and holy relics inherent to any organized religion. The Book of Origin became its most holy text, compiling an assemblage of parables and passages into something easily acceptable and engaging. The title of Dosai came to represent the head of the church, bestowed to a prior whose belief was considered strongest. The Dosai often served as a direct mouthpiece for the Aurai, who could inhabit them and speak directly through them to the material plane. The Dosai came to reside in the city of Celestis, a fortress monastery founded on the planet of the same name. The Flames of Enlightenment were located here, a massive wall of fire, supposedly the physical manifestation of the collective Aurai. Despite promises of uplifting humanity and turning over to them the secrets of the universe, the Aurai deliberately kept their civilization in a primitive state. The worship of the Aurai was merely a method by which they could attain greater power as ascended beings, and the promise of uplifting their followers was never intended to be fulfilled. Their ultimate goal, however, was the destruction of the similarly ascended Ancients. As Origin spread throughout the Aurai's native galaxy, it came to absorb the primitive means of governance utilized by the human population. In this way, The Aurai had direct authority over their worshippers, and were not confined to ruling through their religion alone. Aurai communities were administered primarily as chiefdoms, with local rulers granted the title of administrator. These individuals possessed a blend of religious and civil rights and responsibilities, in keeping with the will of the Aurai. They were subservient only to visiting priors, whose ranks a prominent administrator might one day be invited to join. Most of the followers of Origin, however, would be enlisted into the Aurai army, the ultimate expression of the underlying militarism of the Church. Wary of giving their followers too much power, the army did not seem to be a permanent institution, but one periodically raised by the Aurai to deal with outside threats. Despite their largely medieval appearances, however, the Aurai army employed extraordinarily advanced technologies, even if those using them were ignorant to their nature. Aurai interstellar warships in particular were enormously powerful, superior to nearly every other starship sent against them. Aurai armies were periodically sent on crusades to destroy the organized resistance of unbelievers. Such was the case in 2005, when the Aurai learned of the existence of vast populations of humanity within the Milky Way galaxy. With the early efforts of their priors confronted by local powers, Stargate Command preeminent among them, open war broke out that same year. Already suffering from the power vacuum left by the fall of the Goa'uld System Lords and the decline of the Asgard, Aurai priors achieved extensive inroads into the Milky Way. Numerous primitive civilizations adopted the Origin religion, while many other more obstinate peoples were destroyed. Urgently important to the Aurai's plans was the construction of a supergate large enough to allow their armada to enter the Milky Way. The spread of Origin gave the Aurai an enormous workforce, and a functional supergate was eventually completed in 2006. The first Aurai battle group to arrive in the Milky Way inflicted a decisive defeat upon the defending forces. A combined armada mobilized by Stargate Command, the Free Jafar Nation, the Asgard, Tok'ra, and the Lucian Alliance quickly collapsed. Their victory allowed the Aurai to convert worlds nearly unopposed, and also succeeded in driving a wedge between the defeated allies. Though countermeasures to the superior Aurai technology would reduce the disparity between the two sides, it was devices of the Ancients that ultimately ended the war. Through the deployment of the Sangral, known to legend as the Holy Grail, Stargate Command successfully destroyed the Aurai, with the lone exception of Adria. This proved to be a hollow victory, as Adria had subsumed the power of her fallen people, and continued the crusade against the Milky Way. Ultimately, the fall of the Aurai became complete when Stargate Command utilized another ancient device, the Ark of Truth, to instantly shatter the belief in Origin and reveal to its followers and priors the lies and false promises their faith was built upon. With the flames of enlightenment now extinguished, the Aurai's designs for the galaxy can never come to fruition. Countless civilizations across the galaxy can now, for the first time, seek out their own destiny and not be bound to the machinations of another. But all those who lived under the reign of the Aurai will never forget the few truths spread amongst the lies. For as it was written in the Book of Origin, flames of ignorance burn without pain. Beware the power, or it will consume you before you know.
The Templin Institute investigates the nations, factions, and organizations of alternate worlds. Join other Templin Institute personnel on our Discord server, where discussions are held daily on the elements of world building, spaceship design, the best method of cooking rice, and other critical issues affecting alternate worlds. You'll find a link in the description.